Hello everyone, welcome back to this Python for Absolute Beginners course. Today we'll be looking at user input and string concatenation. Don't worry about the big words. At the end of the course, you will understand what they mean. Now, let's say you are building a program and you want to get user input. Well, let's say your program is doing like a greeting. Someone opens your app and you want to ask for the person's name, and then you will say welcome. You mention the person's name. You need a way to get the input from the user. So you need a way for the user to be able to type something, and then your program will read that, store it somewhere, and be able to do further actions with it. Maybe process it or save it to database, or just output it and use it to greet the person or something. So that's the user. That's the concept of user input in Python, and that's what we'll be looking at now. So, so far we've covered a couple of Python functions. If you remember again, we've seen how to use print statements. We've seen how to use type. Now, the next function I'll be introducing you to is called the input. Now, you remember something very common on all function calls happen to be the open and close bracket. So they always have this open and close bracket. So the function, I'll just delete these because they are not relevant for these at the moment. The function we'll be using for these is the input, right? Now this takes an argument, and the argument is basically the prompt, or whatever label or what message you want to be shown. And I'll just put in something just to use and drive the point home. So we say input here, we open and close brackets, and inside these we write as we, put a string here. Let's say, what is your name? Right. At the moment, I won't do anything with it. I'll just do input what is your name, and then we run it just to see what this looks like. So if you run this now, you can see it says, what is your name? And then it gives a box here where the user can type something inside. So, well, I'll just write in my name here. So what is your name? I write Edima and I enter. And then it's just output that, because by default, the software we are using will always output something. So, so we just take an input here using the input function, and then we typed this in. That's what was shown here, and then it gave the user an input box where they get to type their name in, and then it outputs that. So we'll do some other things with it now. Let's say, if you remember from the last video, we looked at variables. So maybe we can assign these to a variable. Do you still remember how to do that? From that lesson, we said, you can, if you want to get somebody's name, you can do something like name equals to this, and this was us having to manually define the name ourselves. But obviously, if you're running a program that gets used by thousands and millions of people, you won't always be the ones to define their name for them. So let's say we just put these in a variable. So let's say name equals, and we can just get this in. So let's say name equals to input. And what's the input saying? It says, what is your name? Right. So this is saying we have the name here. We are putting it in a variable, and we can now just print it and say, just print the name here. Right. Okay, let's run this. So what is your name? Now you'll notice that it's, at the moment, it's not printing anything, because as I mentioned earlier, Python runs from top to bottom, and so the first thing it's doing is it's trying to get the user input here, and it's waiting until I enter something. That's when it then gets to print that thing on the screen. So at the moment, it's just saying, what is your name? And I just write Edima here. Now when I write this in, if you remember from the variable concept, it saves that value as a string to this variable, and then we are now printing it out here. So what is your name, and then edema. So again, I'll just run this now. So not executed due to pending inputs. Sorry, so just run this again. I used the wrong key combination. So now we have that. What is your name? I typed edema, and then it's outputs that to the screen. That's really easy and very basic. And I think something I should mention as well is the data type that gets returned from that. Now you remember from data type lesson, just the lesson before this one, we talked about well, was it the one before this? I think 2 lessons before this one. We talked about string, integers, floats, and Boolean values. And we use a type function. So let's copy these over, put it in a variable. So what is your name? You type the name and it will put it in a variable. And let's try to get the type. So what's the type of that? So what's the type of this variable? Just to get the data type. So let's run it now. It says, what is your name? And I just write this here. It says, oh, the type is a string. Now that's easy. Remember I said string is anything that you put in a quotes. And so Python always returns string for input. But what if we do something like, maybe let's say declare variable and we call it number, and we now use the input and say, what is your favorite number? Right, now the expectation is that the user is going to type in a number. And so we just do number equals to this, and let's try to get the type. So what's the type of number? All right, let's run this now. So what is your favorite number? I don't know what my favorite number is, but let's just use something like 8. So I type in 8 without the quotes, as so this is supposed to be a well, this is supposed to be an integer. So I just type this in and I enter. Now Python says, oh, that's a string. So why is it a string? Well, whenever you call the input, when you use the input function to get input from a user, Python will always return the value as a string. So the data type for input is always string. Remember, the data type for inputs is always a string. And in future lessons, we'll look at how to do other things with these. So maybe we will have to do some validation just to be sure that the user actually imputed an integer or a float or a boolean or anything. But for now, just remember that Python is always returning a string for input, and that you can define a variable, assign the input for it, and then you'll be able to do anything with it, like printing it the way we printed here. Now let's look at something really cool. Remember, the points we are trying to get to is where we'll be able to say welcome, the name of the person, and so it can then be used by hundreds and thousands of people, and it will always be customized for them. So let's say we want to take, I'll just copy this over. So we have these now, and we say name equals to this. And so when you come, the program will ask, what is your name? When you type in your name, we put it in a variable. And again, if we just want to print this, we've done this before. So if we print this, print name, I'll just copy this before running. Edema, and we just get edema. But no, that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to say something like, hello, welcome, edema, right? And maybe we'll get to the point of adding the exclamation sign at the end. I think we can do this, but first let's just remove it. And all right, sorry, let's put it. Okay, now let's try this one more time. So we have the name here. Name equals to this. What is your name? And normally we should just print name like this, but that's where the concept of string concatenation comes in. So what does concatenation means? Basically, it means trying to join two things together. So you have maybe two strings that you want to join together, or a string and an integer, or a string and a float, and other data types that we want to join together. That's the concept of string concatenation. Because now we have hello welcome as a string, and we are getting the input as the input as a string as well. So how then do we get to join them together so that when we run this, we are showing the full, the full message like this together? That's where the string concatenation again comes in. And basically, to do concatenation in Python, you use a sign called, you already know the sign, the plus sign. Right, you use the plus sign, but now it's not used for addition, rather it's used for concatenation. I hope this makes sense when we start using it. So we just do print input what is your name, and then we put the you put a print here, and then let's just write hello, welcome. Now I'll keep a space, and I'll explain that in actually maybe I can do without a space for now, just to drive the point home. So we say hello, welcome, and then we use the plus sign. So we use the plus sign plus name. If you can, I'll just take a moment to explain this. So we've gotten the inputs from the user. We've saved it in the variable called name, and now we are printing it out. So we say print hello, welcome plus name. But now, because we are not doing like integer addition, it's not 5 plus 1 or 700 plus 3 or anything, and it's also not a float, rather it's string. So when you use the plus sign in string, it adds the different strings together. And so if we print this now, so I'll just print this, let me copy it before printing. So if we run this, it says, what is your name? So if I enter my name here, it says, hello, welcome, Edima. All right, so because we've now joined two strings together. Hello, welcome, Edima, that's what we have. But why don't we have the space? Remember, we added a space here, and the space isn't showing here. Well, that's because the space was outside the quotes. The space was outside the string. So anything that is outside the string, it's just for the programmer, just to make it look nice and all that. But Python doesn't regard that as anything. If you wanted to have the space, then we should put it within the quotes like this. So let's just come down here and do it. So it was like this, and I'm just keeping a space here. So print hello, welcome plus name. So let's run these again. What is your name? So I'll just type in my name, and now we have a beautiful space between both. Well, lastly, remember we wanted to get to the point of being able to add the exclamation sign. So let's just do that as well. So we just copy and paste the same thing again. Hello, welcome, and then keep a space here, plus name. Now you cannot just you can't just do exclamation sign, because that has to be a string. And now we have to concatenate again. So we have to join this again. So just keep a space to make it look nicer. And then use the plus sign again. Open and close the bracket and put the exclamation sign in there. Still the same thing. It's just that now, so we stopped here. We concatenated up to this point. And now we're just joining another string again. So if we run this now, what is your name? So if I type in Edima, it says, hello, welcome, Edima. We can do some really, really cool things with it, but at least that should be enough for now, just to understand user input and string concatenation. So try to play with this. Try to get ask user to input anything, and then see if you're able to output it to the screen. See if you're able to get the data type, and if you're able to concatenate. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.